Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel BFG Woodworking. Today I'll be showing you how I made these Japanese tapestry hangers. So let's get into it. What I want to show you just how simple you can make these with just a simple mite saw, tape measure, and these tongue and groove router bits. Very simple. I've got power tools, so I'll be using them, but you can just use these three. The stock I'll be using is this solid wood beading I had left over from a previous flooring project. I had enough left to get this project done. It's about 20mm square, and this is my first mistake of the build. Making this, I thought the best way to secure it would be to use the old super glue and activator blue painter's tape trick to keep it secure in the middle, and then just clamp it down at the end. As you can see, getting them nice and level. Now my next challenge after doing that was to choose which base to use for my router. Do I use the fixed base, the plunge base? I needed the one that was going to be most stable. The fixed base was the most stable, but due to the size of the router bits, I had to go with the plunge. As you can see, the plastic base had to come off just for the bits to fit through. The plunge base, I could remove it. The fixed base, I could not. So here we are, taking that off. Now this is where I realised my mistake. The bits I have ball bearings and some grub screws at the bottom, and the bench was stopping me from being able to plunge it deep enough to get to the cut I want. So unfortunately I had to remove that. Ended up then just clamping it down to the edge of my workbench, just so I can make sure I could get that full depth cut that I needed. When I made this workbench, which is in another video of mine, I should have had it overhanging. The edge, my worktop should be overhanging, but I didn't make it that way due to material really. So unfortunately I have to open my drawers now to clamp it to the front. The next challenge was to set the depth correctly on my router. Because I've got the corded and not the cordless, I found it awkward holding the router up, getting the workpiece on and getting the right depth set. So what I ended up doing was just sitting on the edge of my workpiece, plunging down until the cutting teeth of the router bit just barely scraped the wood, and then that was top of my plunge. So what I could do is I could just open my depth gauge, insert a bit of scrap stock, bring that down on top of it so it sandwiched it, and then lock it in place. And then that was perfectly in the right depth. Luckily the router bit was pretty much exactly the same as my stock, so I was going to be in the center. As you can see, lines up nice and smooth. Just double check it every time. And then because these are quite big router bits, I set my speed down quite low. I think on this DeWalt I set it to 3. Obviously the larger the bit, the slower speed you want. Smaller bit, higher speed. And then as I was taking away quite a lot of material, I just did very slow, very shallow passes, just taking away a little bit of material at the time. Now what I want to just talk about while this is being routed here is dust. I found out recently that a small workshop like mine, just working in a garage, a shed, you know, somewhere in a very small confined space, you're actually open to them dangerous dust particles more than someone in a fully working shop, because our dust collection is nowhere near as good as theirs. We usually just use a shop vac or nothing at all like this, So you've got all them really bad particles just floating about and really nothing to get rid of them. And it scared me a little bit because I thought, do you know what, that makes sense. So after this video, because I watched the video on that, after I'd done this project, I made sure I've invested in a good mask, and I'm trying to ensure that all my tools going forward are going to be hooked up to the vac, just going forward to make sure I don't have that problem. I recommend everyone doing that. So now I've made my groove cuts. I'm now switching out for the tongue bit. Now the easiest way I found this to get this in the right position was just to use the piece we've just cut, lay that flat on my router, and then just line it up so the bit slotted in to the groove. And then you knew you were at perfect right depth. It was all lined up. And then just the same as the last one. Again, we're not cutting out as much material, but we are still doing a sizable cut. It's just nice, slow passes throughout. Just making sure you take it nice and easy. Don't go too fast, too hard. It's a good router. It handled it well, but it still could feel like it was catching and pulling every now and again. So just back it off and take it easy. It's better to be safe, especially with that bit being massively exposed. I mean, if I dropped it or it flew at me, that could catch on me quite easily. So make sure you do it safely. So now I've made my tongue and groove cuts. Just want to check them out. Make sure they look good, make sure they look clean. Just now going to chop off the ends that I didn't route. Get rid of them. Straight on the miter saw. Like I said, you could just use your hand miter saw and jig to do this bit. It's probably just as easy, not that much slower. But when you've got the tools, you might as well use it. Just do that on both pieces, and then you can do a test fit. Now this test fit isn't going to be brilliant. It's not going to look pretty because obviously you've still got your rough cuts, but at least you'll know if they're lined up, which they are. And then you can do what everyone loves doing, which is sand. To do these, I'm just using a combination of hand sanding with the block sander, just to get them rough edges there up. And then just fold a bit of sandpaper to get in that groove. Make sure that's all cleaned up. And then the other side, just get the chisel out. You could just sand this if you don't have chisels, but I had the chisel, so it just made life a little bit easier. And then just clear up then, and then come back round with the hand sanding. I did this just to clean them chisel marks up, and then just take any sharp edges off too. And then I just kept checking just to see how it all fit together, which after a bit of work, perfect, lovely. Once I was happy with it, they all fit together, and I was happy with how it finished, I then taped it together. What I tried doing was making sure I taped inside the area I was going to cut, because what we're going to do now is, after this bit, is cut it to length. What I'm showing here is how I set up the undermount part of my miter saw. I always have it roughly in the same place, and my garage isn't level, but my actual level of me leg there doesn't change. So all I do is clamp a straight edge to the miter saw fence, loosen up the connecting bit for me undermount, and then just pull them in line. Then you're all good. And then, as always check to make sure that your measurements are correct. That can move about the undermount, so they're not always spot on, so you do have to do some adjusting. My first cut is always to square off the ends. And another bit of safe practice is make sure your miter saw stop spinning before you lift it up, because as you'll see here, I don't, and this happens. Bing. Simple little things that you forget to do Luckily it didn't cause any problems. So now I just flip the piece round so my new straight edge is against my stop. Then we can make our cuts. Do one, slide it across, do the other. And we've got our 2 bits. Now obviously if you were doing, because the traditional Japanese tapestry hangers, they have one of these at the top, one of these at the bottom. Now two reasons I didn't do this is, one, I didn't have enough stock to do 4, but also the material I'm hanging is quite heavy, so it didn't really need the bottom one. But just to make sure I keep these in the right place, I'm just numbering the blue tape. So when I cut these apart, I know exactly where they need to go when I put them back together. Just a nice bit of me separating them. Now here I get to do my first test fit, and you'll sort of see how it's going to end up fitting together with this bit. So you slide your tapestry material over the groove, and then you press in the tongue part. Now what's supposed to happen is that sucks in the material into the actual groove, and then that sits secure in place. Now I really should have thought about this when I was first cutting it, because them route bits are meant to fit very snugly together, because obviously you might be using them for flooring or paneling or something like that. You don't want movement. So I didn't realise this at the time, but now I've got these sandwiched in my material. I can see exactly what I've done wrong. So let's whip out the table saw and just widen the grooves. To do this, to set the blade height, I just put my groove piece over the top of the blade and slowly raised it until it hit the top. Then I knew I had it at the right height. Just double checking. And then I'll move my fence over to the desired location. So what I'm doing, I'm just taking a blade width either side of the groove. You may want to take less off if you've got thinner material that you're hanging, or more off if it's quite thick. But that's what I'm doing. And then I just move my featherboard in place and sandwich it against the fence, just to make sure that's going to be tight up against it. Now since my blade isn't going all the way through the wood, I was quite happy to have my hand travelling over the whole cut. Obviously if you were cutting through this, it'd be very unsafe, but I knew that blade wasn't going to pop through, so I was happy with that. If you're not comfortable with that, and I can imagine the people out saying that was an unsafe move, but I was quite confident in that. You can just not do that, use your push stick and push it all the way through. I don't think it would make too much of a difference. I just felt it was a bit more secure doing it the way I did. Once got one end, just flip it round, ensuring that when I feed it through again, it's aligned up properly, which it is. Send it through. I didn't notice on my cut here that my throat plate on my table saw it dropped down. I think you might have just seen it and it got stuck. So that's why I'm having a bit of a battle here, because it kept hitting the edge of my table saw bed. So I'll have to adjust that when this is all done. But quick lift up, carry on as normal. So once you've done one, it's just a simple rinse and repeat of the other one. You see, this is what I'm talking about, dust collection. I'm only making a couple of table saws, but because I've got the shop vac, I've got to pull it out and hook it up. You think for a simple bit like this, I'm not going to bother, I'll just make the cuts. And really, we should be doing that just to keep them harmful dust out of our lungs. Now, when I was doing the test fit, I didn't like the square look of these. So what I'm doing here is I'm just setting up my router to do a round over. I'm going to round over both sides of the front of the hanger, so it gives it like a dome look. I saw these on picture, I think it looked better, and the contrasting sort of roundness to the squareness of the tapestry I think will be a good look. Now if you've used router before, a round over is probably going to be one of the main bits that you use. On this one, again, I think in my excitement of getting this looking good, because love the idea of the round over, I didn't really support the piece like I should have done. I'm just going across one. With only being 20mm, it's not got much of a support for that base. So you can see in this next one, when I did the other side, I got some stock and doubled it up, and that made life a lot easier and a lot smoother. It's the same as before. Once you've done one, rinse and repeat with the other, and then test it. Make sure you are happy how it all looks. If you want to take more off, take more off. Now to clean these route marks off, because I've got cheap bits that cause burning, just use a combination of hand sanding, oscillating sander, power sander. Once I got them all sanded, cleaned them all up, get rid of all that dust. You need to, just before you put some finish on, make sure you've got rid of all that dust. Did a bit of hoovering, tried to make sure my shop was as dust free as I could. I'm only doing a simple bit of finish on this. Oh, I forgot I had this bit in. So what I was decided to show you here was how easy it is just to cut these with the old miter saw and jig. Simple as that. Now these were already pre-finished, these beading, so just to clean up them cut bits and just make them look a bit nice and bring that pop back to them, I'm just using a bit of linseed oil here. Now back in the home, these are all finished, so what I'm doing is I'm just measuring them and then measuring my workpiece and seeing how much excess I have either side, and then just measuring for where I want my string to start. Once you put the tapestry in, you sandwich it together, and to hold it in place you can use, Japanese use string. You can pretty much use anything you fancy, whatever you think is going to look good, just to wrap the ends in to keep them bits of wood sandwiched. If you're using string like me, I just use super glue to hold the start of the string onto the wood, because that's never going to come off, because that's what's going to hold the string in place when you wind it round. Just using a bit of super glue activator, getting that on there. Once that's done, just making sure I'm happy how secure it is. If not, bit of extra glue. You want to make sure that's nice, because you have to pull that string quite tight when you start off. So you need to make sure that's secure. Now when I originally designed these, I was going to have them hanging. So I was just there testing the tension of if I secured it in that place there, that I'd be the right sort of hanging tension that I need. I ended up scrapping that. I didn't like the way it looked in our room, so I ended up using command strips. I used 4 on each hanger, and that was plenty secure enough, so I just cut them bits of string off and added some command strips to the back, and that did a proper job. But if you want to hang them, that's the easiest way to do it. You could measure it, or you can just eyeball it. It's completely up to you. Once I've done one, did the other, kept the other one in front of me, because at this point I was still planning on hanging them, just to make sure the tension on both strings for where they were going to hang felt right, looked right, and then super glue them in place. After I'd done that, I then got the ends of the strings and then made sure they were all roughly about the same sort of length, because when you wind them on, have them even, makes it look better. So I just measured each end and then cut them down so they were all equal. So when I wind them on, we should have the equal number of winds on the ends of the hanger. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to test it out, put it in. This is one of the fiddliest bits, doing off the edge of the table, because the tapestry kept trying to pull itself down. I really should have laid it fully out on the table, but because I was filming, my tripod was on there, so I couldn't do this. But I would have it laid fully out on a flat surface before you try and fit this, because it makes it a lot easier to get it all even. I just measured from the end on both sides just to make sure my start and finish were in the right place. Just grab my tongue bit. And once you've got it lined up at one end, you can slot it in. You can see how that's sandwiched, holding it in place, but it's not level. I wasn't at this point too fussed if it was level or not, because once I'm happy with how it all is, I'm going to take the tapestry out and give it a good iron before I properly hang it. In hindsight, I found you don't have to take it out to iron it. It will iron absolutely fine with it still in these hangers. Made my job a lot easier after I'd wound them all on to test them, to not take them out. But you can, if you want to, you can just pre-iron them and then put them in. And all I'm doing is just winding them up, making sure I keep it nice and tight, bunching the string together as I go, just to make it look neat and tidy. Since I didn't think I'd ever be taking these out, these hangers, I'm just super gluing that end down. If you wanted to make sure you could remove them, or you think you might change some of these regularly, just tie it off. But I just super glued it, because these are the only things I'm hanging in these. And then there you have it, up on the wall, everything secure in. Easy and simple as that. Not the most difficult thing I've ever made. It is a bit time consuming, more because it's fiddly than anything else. And if you have a router table, I think it'd take half the time to do this. But I'd like to thank you all for taking your time to watch my video. Hope you enjoyed it. Have any questions or comments, please feel free to share. And as always, like and subscribe.